Welcome back, focused learners. Today on The Explainer, we are diving into a truly fascinating dynamic. We're going to demystify the profound, completely intertwined relationship between the books we read and the world we actually live in. We often think of reading as this quiet, solitary escape, just a nice way to retreat from the noise of the world. But what if the pages you're turning right now are actually the gears and levers constructing the very fabric of our society? What if literature isn't just an escape, but literally the blueprint of human history? It's the ultimate chicken or the egg scenario. I want to pose this directly to you and really think about it for a second. Does society create literature, or does literature create society? Obviously, we know writers are products of their time, right? They soak in the culture, the politics, and the social norms around them. But at the exact same time, we've seen books spark massive revolutions, topple regimes, and completely rewire public morality. So which force is actually driving the other? That's the core puzzle we're putting together today. To set the tone here, I absolutely love this insight from the brilliant C.S. Lewis. He argued that literature not only describes reality, but also adds to it. The takeaway? A truly great book is a massive value addition to reality. It's never just some passive historical ledger. When an author takes all these complex emotions, human tragedies, and social dynamics and synthesizes them into a story, they're injecting brand new realities right into our societal bloodstream. Let's move into our first major concept. Section 1. The mirror of society, reflecting our world candidly. Just to ground us real quick, the insights in today's explainer are pulling directly from some really robust sociological research. Specifically, we're looking at the work of Dr. Jaysing B. Zala, published in the International Journal of Research in Humanities and Social Sciences. So we're not just throwing opinions around here. We're looking at peer-reviewed frameworks for how literature actually functions as an active social force. Okay, so think about a physical mirror for a second. It has this unique, slightly brutal quality of being totally candid. It just reflects exactly what it sees. No filter, no judgment. Well, literature often functions the exact same way. It shows a society its true face. It highlights the ugly parts, the systemic flaws, the dark underbelly, right alongside all the bright spots. And by reflecting these realities so vividly, it basically forces us to see what's broken. The ultimate goal of this mirror is to goad the power within us to actually change society for the better. Moving right along to Section 2. Active and reflective roles, the dual functions of reading. It turns out, literature doesn't just do one thing. It actually operates on two distinct functional levels. First, you've got the active role. This is how the very act of reading drives individual development. You read, you form concepts, those become ideologies, and boom, that sparks personal motivation. It gets you to engage with the real world, maybe even become an activist. On the flip side, we have the reflective role. This is about observing rather than doing. It's our window into history. It shows us exactly how past societies functioned and, more importantly, why they ticked the way they did. To make this super concrete, let's look at the reflective role in action. If you pick up the works of philosopher Ernst Bloch, you aren't just reading dense philosophy. You are literally peering into the minds of the German people during the 19th and 20th centuries. Or take classical texts like the Bible. When you read Hosea's rebukes or Paul's early condemnations of class discrimination, you're accurately inferring the deeply rooted social struggles of ancient societies. It's a direct time machine into the minds of past eras. Which brings us to Section 3, the Marxist lens, an academic framework for literary analysis. Now, shifting gears to a strictly academic lens, derived from the historical materialism of Karl Marx. In this framework, art isn't just floating around in some magical, creative vacuum. Marxist critics argue that literary texts actually form specific social institutions. They serve highly specific ideological functions that are entirely based on the author's own background, class, and ideology. So through this lens, class struggle and economic relations are the primary tools used to decode a text. Cultural theorist Terry Eagleton hits the nail on the head here. He points out that this kind of criticism isn't just about, tallying up how many working-class characters pop up in a novel. Rather, it aims to explain the work much more fully by understanding the deep historical and economic forces that actually shaped the author's forms, styles, and meanings in the first place. Let's untangle some of the academic jargon you might run into here. Have you ever heard the term vulgar Marxism? Actually, it's not as scandalous as it sounds. It really just refers to an early period of Marxist literary criticism. These early critics viewed literary texts strictly as a register of what they called the superstructure, which they believed was completely rigidly determined by a society's economic base. But what do those two terms actually mean for us as readers? Let's break that down in Section 4, Base and Superstructure, the architectural metaphor of society. This architectural metaphor is brilliant for visualizing how this theory categorizes human existence. Picture a building. At the very bottom, the foundation is the economic base, the means of production, agriculture, heavy industrialization. Built directly on top of that is the superstructure. This is your social institutions, political ideologies, and yes, your art and literature. The core argument here is that the economic foundation entirely dictates the kind of art a society can even produce. If the economic base shifts, the literature is inevitably going to transform to reflect that new reality. All right, stepping away from the heavy theory, let's jump into Section 5, Catalysts for Social Change, When Books Change the World. History is just packed with staggering proof that novels literally alter the direction of human minds and laws. Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin was a massive catalyst for the anti-slavery movement in the U.S. Charles Dickens used his novels to expose the grim realities of Victorian poverty, forcing actual legal reforms. Over in India, Sarat Chandra's novels shattered deep-rooted conservatism about the role of women. And of course, the intellectual works of Rousseau and Voltaire, those were the literal sparks that set off the French Revolution. Books absolutely don't just sit on shelves, they topple empires. And that leads perfectly into our final section, the power of reading, the foundation of empathy and life. Let's bring all this grand history right down to the bookshelf in your living room. Why do your everyday reading choices matter so much? Empathy. Literature physically lets you see through the lenses of others. It becomes a looking glass into the world exactly as someone else experiences it. Honestly, stepping into an imaginary world is the unmatched ultimate tool for building profound emotional empathy outside of your own lived experience. It's basically a domino effect. Step 1, a piece of literature expresses basic social sympathies. Step 2, as it spreads like wildfire, it creates this shared enthusiasm for human welfare. And step 3, that collective enthusiasm quietly sets in motion massive societal movements. The poet Percy Bysshe Shelley famously called poets the unacknowledged legislators of mankind. They aren't writing legal code, but a simple story lays down the emotional laws that we eventually choose to follow. We've seen how literature mirrors our flaws, shapes our ideologies, and literally ignites revolutions. But this isn't just history, it's happening right now. So I've got to leave you with this final thought to chew on. Look at the books topping the bestseller lists today. What kind of world are we reading into existence right now? How will the literature of today define our society tomorrow? Keep that in the back of your mind the next time you crack open